Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome to another edition of eHeroes. Today's eHero is Rick Harmon, and I wanted to bring Rick on because he's got a special, unique superpower that I think everyone needs to learn about, but he only uses his superpower in California. So if you're in California, then eventually you may need Rick's service, but if you're not, I want you to still listen in because it's going to be some good stuff. So welcome, Rick.
Hey, good to be here, Rob.
So let's talk about your superpower and why only California?
Well, in several days, I need to make a business trip to Las Vegas. And so Thursday, probably by about end of business day, I'll be over the state line into Nevada. And that's when my superpowers, as far as the business that I do, will cease to exist and then magically reappear when I come back sometime over the weekend. And since I don't drink or gamble and all that, I'll have all my money theoretically. Um, no, in truth, my superpower developed out of a number of skill sets that I didn't really know about. And one was out of necessity. And that was because many years ago, I was in the corporate world and then discovered, not surprisingly, that I was out of a job, which I didn't mind. I'm probably the only person I've ever met who was really happy the day they got fired. And then I realized I had another issue, and that was that I was unemployable. And so that made life a lot easier. I've always discovered, Rob, that one of the things that can be extremely valuable is we don't always know what we want, but we sure as hell know what we don't want. And so my superpowers kind of evolved from that. It really came about being, I'm very uncomfortable with people who have chaotic situations. And back in the, I have to do the old man voice now. Back, how's the audio on that? Back in the 70s. Um, and I was not a middle-aged man in the 70s, so I was a young man. And I decided to start working real estate. And I began with foreclosures. And what I liked about foreclosures was the area that a lot of people did not like. There were issues, there was chaos, and what have you. I was very comfortable. It was their chaos, not my chaos. And that over a period of time evolved into situations where people had died. And I was very comfortable with that. My up until very recently, my family on my dad's side owned a well-known chain of mortuaries in California, of all things. I had nothing to do with it. I always explained it to friends who asked about it, saying that my cousins were in the health aftermarket. But you you didn't expect this interview to go this way, did you?
No, no.
Yeah,
But that's the uniqueness of these interviews.
yeah,
They
yeah.
never go the way I think they're going to go.
Oh, yeah. Tell God your plan, right? So I was always comfortable with that. I never had any kind of a preconceived notion about people, and one and in real estate, houses don't care, people do. So I'm comfortable with people who have like grief and all that. But over a little over 30 years ago, I gained some expertise when some attorneys asked me if I could work with a probate estate and make a loan. And that's been my primary business ever since. But the long and the short was they described a situation that I didn't have a clue because of that. Well, the owner's dead. I mean, how can they do anything? So that's how it came about. So when they described the scenarios, it's like it was a perfect fit. I was very comfortable with people, and rarely are my clients in grief. They usually have other things going on, other issues, baggage, whatever.
So you take these properties that somebody had died, and you try to help the person that's receiving that property or inheriting that property to get money out of it.
In a word, yeah. And my business evolved as I'm actually a real estate investor who specializes in lending money, mortgage loans on the equity to the people in charge of probate estates and trusts. And there's any number of very unusual scenarios, and we could take, a lot of time going through some of these scenarios. When you listen to my podcast, The Gordian Knot, it's no accident that it's got a strange name like that. And in most of my business, well over 95% of my business comes to me from attorney referrals. I love their world. I'm very comfortable with it. The messes and their clients, I'm very good at creating clarity. So my superpower really is taking people who have these wild situations, sometimes not so wild, but learning how to deal with the people and bringing them out of overwhelm and providing some clarity. And consequently, that's why my business has really evolved into working with inherited property, entangled trusts, and estates in chaos. So the property liquidity issue, because they can't go get a bank loan because they don't own it, and banks don't typically lend to dead people, only dishonest bankers, I suspect. But there's any number of reasons why people do that, and I discovered these were like an evergreen number of reasons, and people will continue to die and leave messes. That's what all government studies have told me. I made that up.
Is California just easier to do this, or it's just that's where you live?
Well, it's the laws are so different from place to place, and I decided that what I wanted to do was to create a niche because it didn't exist. And so since the laws are very different, and I have enough to keep me busy, and have kept me busy now for many decades, that the scenarios are plentiful, but the laws in other states are really too much. And I'm just not really motivated. So I really focus on, when I ask myself, who do I want to be a hero to? I really want to be a hero to the people in California, or at least California real estate. So I will get people who actually live outside of the state of California who are in charge of an estate with California real estate. I'll deal with people. I've dealt with people in New York City. I've dealt with people in Europe. I've dealt with people in, I had someone who had to go to the American consulate in Sydney, Australia, to get documents signed. Of course, nowadays, between email and FedEx and all that, you can do some pretty amazing things. So it's not so important where the people are located, but the property needs to be California. And that way I focus on the laws. I work all 58 counties. It's a weird little business. People ask me what I do. And for many years, I used to stumble because I didn't really want to tell them. It's not that I was embarrassed, but they'd still walk away saying like, huh?
So you had mentioned emails, and so how did technology help you maybe enhance your superpower where you're not having to travel as far?
Okay, well, when I went to do the old man voice again, back in the mid-90s, before we really had really active websites and all that, I had a website and a URL about 1995 or 6 or something like that. And I picked this website name because we were limited to 8 characters, I think, at the time, or whatever the limits were. And so I did the best I could. That's why I came up with this name, Closed Probate. And the intent was to have something that made that people would see the benefits right off the bat. So I had a little form, and it was pretty primitive, of course, especially compared to nowadays. There wasn't much interactive. But the intent was people they could go online, they could at their own convenience see the information, find out if their situation somewhat fit the parameters of what would happen. And the very first person who contacted me, I thought was a prank. It was, I really hadn't thought about this one in years. You just brought it up now, so I'm just very much in the moment. And the gal, we'll call her Evelyn, because that was her name. See, I could make up a pseudonym and call her Mary, but her real name was Evelyn. But this is 25 years ago almost. And her situation is her mother had died in the LA area, Los Angeles area, but she is in the East Coast. Now, we even had caller ID at the time. So when the first time we connected, it was from a form that I got using technology and an email. And all I really got was the property address and the basics. But when I called her and she called me, or whether she called me back to talk about this was really strange. Caller ID said, had the phone number. Of course, I called the phone number and the answer, the White House. And I'm thinking, oh man, if there's ever a setup, this is a setup. Okay, now it gets worse. It gets worse. I wasn't even, it had no intention of sharing this story with you. So this is right in the middle of the Monica Lewinsky during the Clinton era, okay? And so I'm thinking, okay, so this is really, really, really a setup. It just happened to be that my client, I'd had hundreds of clients, but she was the first client I had through the website. And she happened to work as an intern. Her name was not Monica. I just want to make that clear. But she was an intern at the Western, or at the White House during the Clinton era. Go figure. And she was a lovely client. Actually, in that case, it was nice because I felt good about what I could do because she needed an attorney, and so I found her an attorney, and we did all the things we needed to do. Worked out really well. Everyone was happy.
And you just mentioned that I think the key word, you felt good, and you've helped all these people over the course of what, 30, 40 years, and it's one of those jobs where you can feel good about what you're doing and get paid, a great deal of money to do so.
Well, I haven't missed any meals. No smart aleck remarks about that. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good from a marketing standpoint. What really turned things around for me was when I went to my first Jay Abraham seminar, and turned out Jay's now a neighbor, but that's whole another topic. Leads to my beach house, but life good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but this isn't really about me. This is about the kind of problems and the issues that people have and the messes and how they get served. So I've had other people who try to get into the business that I'm in, but by and large, there is a lot to know. And people say, well, are you an attorney? I just assume you were. No, I'm not an attorney. I have no desire to be an attorney. Well, yeah, what I do is lucrative, but the body of knowledge and hence the superpowers has in part been a lot of the technical skills, but I don't pretend to know all the laws. But even before I developed this probate expertise and became somewhat of an authority or an expert on inherited property, I really developed and honed my skills dealing with real estate title, meaning how people own and the issues that are related to that. So that's what I initially focused on, and probate, as an example, is really just a title problem. It's a barrier to somebody's ownership or to their inheritance until debts and other claims and things are settled, absent some other type of an estate plan. So my business model has always been based on making loans that would not be, let's put it this way. When you're an equity lender, the collateral is real estate. And in California, I understand the laws and the limitations. It's a business type of a loan, as an example. But people bring me a lot of other problems that need to be dealt with along the way. And so what we will ultimately do is we solve a lot of the problems, or we fix the things that we can and deal with the people issues. Because you have time problem. People bring these things that are urgent, exigent, pending mortgage foreclosure, reverse mortgage units come due because of balloon payment, or property tax sale from the county tax collector kind of a thing, on and on. All these time pressure things. But we also have things that are basically scenarios that are as simple as Billy and Sally inherit a house, and Sally wants to keep the house and Billy wants his money. I don't know what Billy's going to do with his money. I don't really care. I don't care whether he uses it for his education or whether Billy takes the money and improves his meth lab or whatever. That's his business. That's not my concern. My concern is, just when you thought it was safe, right, Rob? But my concern is, how do I best serve the person and the family in charge of the estate?
So how do these people get their estates messed up? I mean, I was listening to your I think it was episode 20 of your Gordian Knot podcast, and you talk about black swans, and I was listening, and I guess when like brother and sister own the property, and one dies and they can't track down the other, I guess that's one example. But I guess that you've seen all kinds of different ways that people mess up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that last episode, I didn't want to get too graphic with that one, but just the short version of it had to do with my inability to get a straight answer from my prospective clients. And in one case, I kept thinking of the movie Chinatown, which, by the way, is one of my favorite movies, Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway. But if you remember the scene where I'm not, in favor of men slapping women or the other way around, but it was she's my sister, she's my daughter, she's my sister and my daughter. So welcome to my world, Rob. So we do have some unusual situations. That's not common, but one of the things I try to do is I try to put people at ease they bring these really wild situations, fractional interests, multiple generations, where if somebody lives in the property, they know, well, there's a house here, we've lived in the house, we painted it twice, we put a new roof on it, our family's been here since 1948, but nobody's ever dealt with the title. They pay the house is free and clear. So there'll be multiple generations of issues. There'll be things, Uncle Fred, he owns half, but we haven't seen him in 32 years. When he went off with that woman or whatever like that. Or I'll get the stories when he went off with that woman we thought was a woman. The fact patterns are endlessly entertaining. And I like to say, you cannot buy this kind of entertainment. And I'm not here to judge people or pick on them, but it's interesting work. But there is a lot of legal background, and there's a lot to distill. So in truth, my biggest superpower is not being put off by all these facts and things, to take these puzzle pieces together. And by the way, we picked the name of the podcast, The Gordian Knot, because I didn't think it was appropriate to call it, like clusterfucks.com or something like that. But that's really what people bring us sometimes. So you said this was not a G-rated show. Not now.
Not now.
Yeah, exactly. So, that'll change a few things. Anyway, but
welcome to California.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to California. Now go back to Nevada. Exactly, where their ethics are, considerably, higher. They raise the bar. Let's not talk about California politics. That is not the point of the podcast. And I just had lunch, and I don't want to lose it. So,
well, have the laws in California made it easier for you or more difficult?
When it comes to what I do, they're actually, I wouldn't say easier. I mean, and they're definitely complicated, but most of the laws regarding settling an estate make sense. Some of the laws are by statute, meaning that they're written by code, and some are by case law, that they've been tried in the courts, and they're understood to be, well, this would be the result, and this is what happens. So I get people who will bring me situations where we have to clear title. I I stopped uh, buying real estate as rental properties some years ago, and I enjoyed it for a long time, and I made money through appreciation, but I did not enjoy. As I'm in my mid 60s now, so the idea of dealing with tenants and toilets doesn't appeal to me. But I was okay with it for a long time, especially when I got started. I was fairly young when my dad died, not to tell a any kind of a long tale, but I knew if something was going to happen, no one was leaving me a pile of dough. My
Yeah.
dad left me about $2,000 of Pacific Gas and Electric stock, and after 1 year, I parlayed $2,000 of stock into $1,800 of stock, mind you. Thank you very much. So I proved my brilliance. So that was my inheritance, and I'm grateful. You
Yeah,
know,
but now you're more of a detective. I mean, you probably spend a
yeah.
lot of time tracking down, next to kin, relatives, somebody to for this property.
I don't. But
You
I,
don't.
yeah, I actually I consider myself an opportunity detective. I mean, it's an opportunity to be a service.
Hmm.
No more than people in recovery um, pull people off of bar stools. I myself don't chase people down, but others do, and they bring these situations to me, and they know about a property, and the property has a fractionalized interest. Basically it's broken down into pieces, maybe multiple generations. This morning, dealing with a gentleman who buys real estate in San Diego County, and he's trying to put all these pieces together, and he wanted to pay me on an hourly basis to do that. I don't have an interest. But I used to own properties. I still have a number of rentals, but I used to have a lot of them, and I have quite a few who have rentals. And that was actually how I built up my portfolio. But I decided that, I really like solving these problems. That's where the pleasure is. So I've been layering out and slowly selling off some of my properties, and putting the money out in the form of mortgage loans to these estates and trusts. And
But is
it,
the risk now more controllable than tenants and toilets?
well, I'll put it this way: the management of the property is no longer my responsibility. As long as I don't own the property, it's someone else's responsibility. So the way I look at it is that someone else can receive all the benefits of property ownership, even if that includes the thrill of property management. But I don't receive any great pleasure. I'm not energized by property management. Although there was a time, and when I didn't have any money to start, that was the first way I bought my first rental. I bought a property and then worked it out. For a lot of people who they're inheriting property, they think that keeping a property as a rental makes sense, and a lot of times it does. But the property is going to have to make sense. So what happens? Sometimes people will inherit a property, and they'll want to keep it in the family name because in California we have these unusual laws we call Proposition 13, parent to child exclusion, and you can keep these property taxes low. This law passed by 1978. There was a guy that I had the benefit of meeting one time named Howard Jarvis, and he ran a nonprofit group. He was actually, I think, at apartment owners, but they rallied and then got a law passed so that the property taxes wouldn't go up. And so I'm very familiar with what that law. Sometimes people will inherit a property, they can make it work as a rental because they could find a way to keep their low property taxes. Where someone else might have receive buy a $500,000 property as a rental. I just picked that as an even number. Someone who's inheriting a property, maybe they inherit that property and they have to maybe they're the full heir or beneficiary. By the way, the difference between an heir and a beneficiary is an heir is not named in a will and a beneficiary is, just like in a trust. And anybody who doesn't know the difference between an executor and administrator, the job is the same. An executor is named in a will to execute the wishes of the decedent. So a little education. But these crazy scenarios sometimes can be made very straightforward. People bring me these pieces. I like to take these pieces together and offer them clarity. And I ask this one big question, which is awkwardly phrased, but really it's just like the "who do you want to be a hero to" question. And I'll ask, what do you want to see happen? Because I can't really get into somebody's head, but I can find out what the result that somebody thinks they want. Because just telling somebody they want a loan or they want this or that probably isn't enough. So if we focus on um, the end result that they desire, that makes it a lot easier, to manage. Let my team worry about what we have to do to get there if there's something to work with. And if someone comes to us, early in the process and they don't have an attorney, we have relationships. I work with many attorneys. We market to well, let's put it this way. There are probably not many attorneys throughout the 58 counties of California that we don't market to. So I field a lot of calls. I talk to a lot of attorneys. And I always tell them that, I'm really a vendor to the attorneys, but I insist on being considered a peer. And if the attorneys don't treat me as a peer, then we have a problem. So, because it's my money, literally my money, is how the attorneys get paid most of the time. So I'm not asking for anything special, but it is useful to put things in perspective. So
when you say your money, you do things that are different than maybe other people that sort of do what you do, but they rely on the bank's money.
Well, they don't really rely on the bank because they can't. The bank is not going to give an individual a loan because banks don't make loans to estates and trusts. We call it irrevocable trust. In other words, after it's changed from one trustee to another. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of other companies that are brokers. And how do I say this? I'm one of the largest investors to my competitors. So I'm actually a direct lender, and I don't want to sound like I'm, flapping my wings or something like that here. But I'm a direct lender. But people need to understand too is that what they're really asking somebody to do is they're looking for someone who can help them do something, and it's more than just the money. Mm-hmm. So the money, if you will, the capital or liquidity, is only part of the solution. There are other things going on. There are maybe some tax consequences. I'm not a tax advisor, but I'm well aware of some of the pitfalls. And there are other legal challenges in the timing of these things and how these things are done, and also the negotiation process. So living in this world very comfortably with these attorneys is important, because I keep the attorneys out of trouble quite often. Or they'll have a situation where the attorney and the client have gone, they become adversarial for one reason or another. And not that I, enjoy playing the role of an intermediary. I could bring things back together sometime. But at the end of the day, the attorney wants to provide their service. The client wants to get on, past the discomfort of dealing with the courts. The judges just want to make sure they don't see somebody back in their courtroom, ideally. And I want to be able to be of service, but it's also got to be worthwhile, to us. Mm-hmm. So we'll like to, somebody calls us up and they've got what they think is a $5,000 problem, but when in fact they've got is a $500,000 house that's going in foreclosure sale because they're down $5,000 to the bank lender that they can't get through with their artificial intelligence telephone system or whatever, or no one will talk to them anyway. The problem is not a $5,000 problem. The value of the equity, that's the value of the problem. And the loss of this property potentially, and the legacy, and maybe the tax benefits. That's really the real extent of the problem. So I try to tell people that, hey, this problem is not because you have a gushing jugular vein and you're looking for a spot bandage, and you can't put a tourniquet around your neck to stop the bleeding. You need someone to understand this and really to solve a problem if you're going to keep the property. People come to us and they want to find a way they can either keep the property either just for now or forever. So we try to give them a vision of how they can do that, where we're involved. If it's something, there's a better way to do it. More than happy to send them, to somewhere where there's a better fit. I've been doing this a long time. I'm not particularly concerned about. I had an attorney that called this morning and had a situation. I said, no, there's a better way to do this. You don't need me.
Mm-hmm.
What he's trying to do.
So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, what I really prefer, if it's an attorney, go ahead and call us. If you're a family member, and they're really trying to do something now with a California property, they're trying to, basically borrow on the equity of the property, your person in charge, executor, administrator, trustee. Start at the website, closeprobate.com, closeprobate.com. Once they've gone to the website, they'll see videos and things that are helpful in giving them some clarity as to what's going on. Once you're ready, you can either do the online forms, or they can go to call us, and then they talk to 24/7. Our call center is open at 1-800-779-2552. If they're just interested, they can also look at it from our social media channels. I have a blog, rickharmon.com, and a little Facebook site, which is Rick Harmon Rants, and be a little obtuse, but we try to keep it relatively clean there. And a little Facebook page called Close Probate with Rick Harmon. Those are usually the most ways people reach us. If you're an attorney or a real estate professional, and you really like listening to these sick and twisted stories, or at least you may not find the exact same fact pattern, but what you may discover is some of the things that will get your mind going, like, oh yeah, that kind of fits, or there's some similarities here. Our podcast is thegordiannotshow.com, or you can just subscribe at Apple or your favorite player device.
Well, there you go, folks. That's what makes Rick an e-hero, and it's very unique at what he does. So, go to his website, closeprobate.com, go to his social channels, go to his Gordian Knot show podcast, and listen to what he has. I mean, the stories are fantastic, and you'll learn a little bit more about the California puzzle that, Rick puts together almost on a daily basis. So thank you, Rick, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.